Hello everyone!
Hello, welcome to MyData-NEWS.
Welcome back. We have some great news today. But before to start, we just want to remind you some few rules. So please be kind on the chat. You can always interact, but we don't want to see anything offensive.
Do not hesitate if you have questions, remarks, or if you want to talk about a specific subject, you can always put a comment in the chat. So let's go.
Yes.
In June, the Department of Health and Social Care announced that it had published the final version of a new data strategy called Data Saves Life, Reshaping Health and Social Care with Data, following the consultation. In particular, the department noted that the strategy focuses on 7 principles to harness the data-driven power and innovation seen during the COVID-19 pandemic to drive transformation in the health and care sectors, creating a secure and privacy-preserving system that delivers for both patients and professionals. Especially, the strategy outlined the below principle. So the first one, improving trust in the health and care system use of data. The second one, giving health and care professionals the information they need to provide the best care. The third one is improving data for adult social care. Number 4 is supporting local decision makers with data. And the number 5 is empowering researchers with the data they need to develop life-changing treatment and diagnostic. The number 6 is working with partners to develop innovation that improve health and care and developing the right technical infrastructure. I will continue with the second news regarding the life sector. So according to a report published mid-June by The Markup, it's a non-profit newsroom, Facebook has been receiving private medical data thanks to the tracking tool MetaPixel, which is installed on many hospital websites. The next day, a class action lawsuit was filed against Facebook parent company, Meta, alleging that the company violated health privacy rules. And an anonymous patient filed the case in the Northern District of California on behalf of millions of other Americans whose medical privacy has been violated by Facebook Pixel tracking tool. But you need to know that health information is protected under the Federal Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, the HIPAA, and the lawsuit alleges that Facebook received the data without HIPAA authorization or patient consent.
I will continue now. Sorry for that. We had some issues, but now we are all set. So, we have some news from the US senators, Michael Bennet and Catherine Cortez Masto, that urge the US Department of Health and Human Services to amend the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, so HIPAA's privacy rule, to better protect data of individuals seeking reproductive health care. And the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade created profound uncertainty for patients concerning their rights to privacy. And the privacy rules is intended to define and limit the circumstances in which an individual's protected health information may be used or disclosed by covered entities.
Thank you. We will continue with the second section regarding data protection. So the European Commission found the Dutch Data Protection Authority, the Autoriteit Persoonlijke Gegevens, misread the EU GDPR, leading to a strict interpretation. So the Commission said that the Data Protection Authority's interpretation constitutes a serious obstacle for companies to process personal data based on a commercial interest because they should receive permission from every data subject and called on the authority to change its opinion. But in response, the Dutch chairman of the Data Protection Authorities refused, writing that she is strongly convinced that this cannot be the case.
Beginning of June, the French Data Protection Authority, so the CNIL, published an FAQ in relation to CNIL enforcement's action regarding the use of Google Analytics, as well as guidance on bringing audience measurement tools into compliance with the GDPR. And in particular, CNIL recalled that in its decision, it had ruled that the use of Google Analytics by French website operators resulted in the transfer of personal data to the US in the absence of a sufficient safeguards for European data subjects, violating Chapter 5 of the GDPR in light of the Schrems II cases. And furthermore, in the FAQ, CNIL reiterated that the mere conclusion of SECs with Google is insufficient to meet the requirements of the GDPR, further noting that additional legal, organizational, and technical measures are required and that those implemented by Google were insufficient.
In beginning of June too, like in Luxembourg, the National Commission for Data Protection announced that it had adopted its certification mechanism. So the GDPR certified assurance report based processing activities. So it's called the GDPR and the CRRPA, making this the first certification mechanism to be adopted on a national and international level under the GDPR. And in particular, the CNPD highlights that following the adoption of this certification, companies, public authorities, associations, but also other organizations established in Luxembourg now have the possibility to demonstrate that their data processing activities comply with the GDPR. And the CNPD has outlined that the certification mechanism can promote transparency and compliance to the GDPR, as well as allow data subjects the ability to better understand the degree of protection offered when their data is processed.
And also the French Data Protection Authority, CNIL, announced that it had launched a study into geolocation data collected by apps as part of its priority areas for 2022, outlined in its strategic plan for 2022 until 2024. And in particular, CNIL outlined that it will utilize an anonymized database containing approximately 5 million smartphone advertising identifiers as provided by data broker, as well as publicly accessible data such as calendars, maps of French population density, and sport venue websites.
So in Denmark, the Danish Business Authority announced that it had published in 2021 an annual report on cookies. And in particular, the Danish Business Authority states that the report contains, among other things, the result of its audit of the 100 most visited Danish websites, where it's found that around 50% of the website violated cookies rules, with particular problem around insufficient information with the use of third parties' data. And in this regard, the Danish Business Authority noted that based on these audits, the report provides advice for website owners' cookie solutions, and additionally, the DBA highlighted that the report also provides an insight into the DBA screening of websites in respect to the data sharing practices with third parties.
And I have now an interesting news, really great news. So the Irish Data Protection Commission informed EU privacy regulators of draft plans to halt data transfer from Meta-owned Facebook and Instagram. So the DPC drafted its preliminary decision on the matter in February before filing for consideration and final approval by the EDPB, and which has at least 30 days to act. So the draft decisions follows legal proceedings on the lawfulness of Meta EU-US transfer in the wake of the Court of Justice of the European Union's Schrems II ruling, and if approved, Facebook and Instagram's EU services would be blacked out.
Very interesting, thank you.
Yes.
So in a keynote speech at its two-day conference, The Future of Data Protection Effective Enforcement in the Digital World, the European Data Protection Supervisor, Mr. Wiworski, called for a pan-European data protection enforcement model to ensure consistent and fundamental data protection rights. And he also said that such a model will not only mitigate the problem of uneven allocation of responsibilities, but would also help to ensure real consistencies in data protection law across the EU, including through strong mechanism of collegiality. And continuing with the European agency, the EDPB adopts guidelines on certification as a tool for transfer and dispute resolution binding decision regarding accord. So the guidelines will be subject to public consultation until the end of September, while the decision will be adopted by the LSA without undue delay and at the latest moment, 1 month after the EDPB has notified its decision.
I really like this idea of certification. So, the Council of State confirms the CNIL analysis of Amazon's mistakes in terms of cookies. And the company will have to pay a fine of 35 million euro. So this is a setback for Amazon, and the American company has failed to overturn a sanction from the CNIL in court. And the e-commerce giant had brought the case before the Council of State, but the latter agreed of June 27 to the body responsible for ensuring the proper use of personal data.
The CNIL is very active for the moment.
Always. So what is about
Yeah. So we continue with some authorities in Europe who insist that location data is not personal data as defined by the GDPR. So Spain, Austria, not convinced location data is personal information. So last week, the EU privacy group like None of Your Business, set up by privacy warrior like Max Schrems, appeals a decision of the Spanish data protection authorities to support Virgin Telecom's refusal to provide the location data it has stored about a customer. And in Spain, according to the privacy group None of Your Business, the government still requires telcos to record the metadata of phone calls, text messages, and cell tower connections, despite Court of Justice decisions that prohibit data retention. And a Spanish customer demands that Virgin reveals its personal data, as allowed under the GDPR, and the Article 15 of the GDPR guarantees individuals the right to obtain their personal data from companies that process and store it. So Virgin, however, refused to provide the customer's location data when a complaint was filed in December 2021, arguing that only law enforcement authorities may demand that information. And the Spanish Data Protection Authority sides with the company, of course.
That's interesting. Okay, now let's talk about some legislation news. On June 3rd, 2022, a bipartisan group of US Senate and US House of Representative leaders released a discussion draft for a federal comprehensive data privacy bill called the American Data Privacy and Protection Act, ADPPA. So, for example, discussion draft bill is the first comprehensive federal privacy bill to gain bipartisan and bicameral support, and with discussion for federal data privacy bill ongoing, there is much attention on how this bill will progress. And also important, a week later, the US House Committee on Energy and Commerce held a hearing on the American Data Privacy and Protection Act discussion draft and a leading contender for a comprehensive federal privacy framework. So the famed sticking points of individual redress mechanism, preemption of state laws, and the role of US Federal Trade Commission, FTC, and data security requirements necessary to create a bill that not only guarantees a right to privacy, but also creates a safer place for all Americans were not discussed extensively.
So, and last Tuesday, the European Parliament voted to adopt the Digital Market Act, the DMA, and the Digital Services Act, the DSA, with a broad majority. And on the same day, Internal Market Commissioner Thierry Breton provided a sneak peek into how the new rules will be enforced. So the Commission presented its digital service package in December 2020. 1.5 years later, both regulations have passed the first reading in the European Parliament and are expected to enter into force this autumn. So the adoption has been extremely quick by Brussels standards, signaling strong political will from EU policymakers to address the regulatory gaps in the online sphere. And all eyes are now turning to enforcement, as it will be the first time the Commission will directly implement internal market legislation that has until now been delegated to the national authorities.
An in-principle agreement has been struck between the UK and South Korea to share data, and it is the first deal of its kind for the UK with any state since it left the EU in early 2020. So the deal will likely affect ordinary people, as the agreement includes the right for both nations to use personal data from each country commercially, and companies will also be able to move their data between the two countries without any restrictions. So a key argument from those who backed the UK's exit from the EU was that Brexit would allow the UK to sign more deals and agreements. And since this is an in-principle agreement, though, it is unknown when, if ever, it will come into full effect. But the EU already has a fully signed data adequacy deal with South Korea. So the UK says it's publishing for similar trade deals with over a dozen countries, including Australia, India, Singapore, and US.
Okay, so we need to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So, also regarding the UK, the United Kingdom post-Brexit reform of its data protection laws took another step forward with the government's final response to its data consultation. So initially launched September 2021 under Data a New Direction and open to public comments for 10 weeks, the final response features several incremental reforms, such as altering some accountability provision, including the removal of a data protection officer requirement, adding an opt-out model for a wide swath of online tracking, and update also to the UK Information Commissioner's Office.
About the US, there are bills being considered by the California legislature during 2022 session that amend the California Consumer Privacy Act and or the California Privacy Rights Act, so otherwise impact how organizations understand or approach each law. So the IAPP keeps track of this proposal and their progress in its CCP and CPRA related legislation tracker, really interesting by the way. And the tool includes the bill number and a brief summary of the proposed legislation, as well as the status and last legislative action. And according to California's 2022 legislative calendar, on August 31 is the last day for bills to be passed in either legislative chamber, while the governor must sign or veto legislation by September 30. And I have last news about US, because Maryland amends its Personal Information Protection Act. So end of May, Maryland legislature enacted House Bill 962, which amends Maryland's Personal Information Protection Act. And the amendments update and clarify various aspects of the act, and including, but not limited to, the time frame for reporting data, a data breach affected individuals, and content requirements for providing notice to the Maryland Attorney General.
Thank you. So a lot of news about the UK and the US.
And the US, yes.
And Doc Neil, she's working
also. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And see you next time.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.